I think everybody walked away that day knowing that the question we posed did not just affect young Africans. And the diverse people we had in our panelists all faced that same question at some point in their life.
Right.
And we walked away from that learning different ways to address that topic.
I see. Kwame Nkrumah said this, and I want to quote, "Africa needs a new type of citizen, a dedicated, modest, honest, informed man." Maybe he should have added woman too. "A man who submerges self in service to the nation and mankind. A man who abhors greed and detests vanity. A new type of man whose humility is his strength and whose integrity is his greatness." Kwame Nkrumah, Africa must unite. Do you see what you are trying to achieve in this statement? And please elaborate.
Yes, I see what we are aiming for at the African Student Association and African Identity Conference in Nkrumah's illustration of the man Africa needs. But before we build that man, he has to understand who he is.
Okay.
He has to know his purpose in this world, and he has to know his greatness. And an individual cannot get to that if all he knows about his past is barbaric acts. And all he knows about his present is pitiful, countless pitiful perceptions of who he is. It's very hard for you to find pride in who you are and find your purpose when everything you represent is bad, and it's corruption, and it's poverty, and it's diseases, and there's nothing inspiring about that. So before we can mold that individual, he has to know that he's much more than that, and he comes from a great people. So it all starts with finding your identity, learning about your past, and building on that to be a great citizen for your people and your country.
But how do we learn from our past? Especially a people who were once enslaved and colonized, and all the information that we're getting is information from the people who did whatever they wanted to do there. How do we move from that zone to being informed, well-informed, that Kwame Nkrumah is talking about? It's not information that is backward, or that tells us that we are backward, or that tells us that we are primitive. Nkrumah is talking about new information of knowing who we are. How do we get to do that?
It's very simple. You read the works of African authors.
Okay.
For example, before I read the works of Sheikh Anta Diop, I assumed that I had no history before colonization.
Whoa.
But Sheikh Anta Diop taught me that I had a history, and the cradle of civilization was in Africa, and the oldest fossils were found in Kenya.
Right.
So that inspired me and gave me hope that I am from a people of great past. I am the product of scholars.
Okay.
So I don't think it's enough for us to say that this is what we've been told, so we should take it. You look for works of African writers, credible African writers.
Okay.
You study that, and then you teach others.
Oh, beautiful. So we can reverse the negativism that they have been teaching us and go back to a more positive history that we know we left behind.
Yes, my people have a saying that se ure fina sa osan kofa entry, which means that it's not an abomination to go back and retrieve what you missed. So it's never too late for a young African or an African in general to study their past and correct what we have taken as the norm.
So what do you say when a person calls himself a traditionalist. For example, I'm an African traditionalist. When I started the show, the purpose of it was to teach what African traditionalism is all about. Because anywhere I went, the first question they asked me was, are you a Christian? And I said no. Are you a Muslim? And I said no. And each time they asked me, so what are you? And when I told them I was a traditionalist, they asked, what is that? When an African talks about their traditional belief system, how would you, as a young generation, portray it for others to understand?
That all goes into the identity topic also, because ever since most countries were adapted to Christianity and Muslim,
Right.
we've demonized our own religions
Right.
to a point where we don't even want to touch that topic, which is also bad because we're not learning. I honestly don't believe that every African went to hell before Christianity or
Right.
Muslim. So we should not say that every traditional religion is bad. We should first understand it. Before you demonize something, understand it and make your own judgments of it. So I think the new generation of Africans need to take the time to learn our traditional religion and make our own judgments on it.
Okay. This question that I'm about to ask you, don't look at it in a different way. I'm very proud of you. The things that you are doing, I support you wholeheartedly. But there's a saying that if you cannot beat them, join them. What do you think you will succeed when others before you have tried and failed miserably?
I think with every journey, the end is not the most important goal.
Okay.
You analyze the steps the person took. You learn from the mistakes they made, and then you walk with that. You use that to mold your goals. So, for example, when you look at the dreams of Nkrumah,
Okay.
Nkrumah wanted Africa to unite.
Right.
And most people will say he failed because Africa is still not united. But my generation today learned from everything that Nkrumah preached.
Right.
So it's more important for us to not just look at am I going to succeed or am I going to fail? The people, the generation before us lit a torch. It's
Okay.
our responsibility to pick up on that, build on it, so that the next generation before us will have something to keep going.
Beautiful. Now, I forgot to ask you this. What is the composition of your membership?
We have about 70 members. On
70
campus.
members. Beautiful. And they are men, are young men, Africans attending school, college,
Yes.
just as young ladies?
Yes, we actually have 2 men on our executive board. My secretary and my treasurer are both
Okay.
men.
Right.
And there's a lot of African men on Lehman campus.
Okay.
Because Africans, when they come here, the first thing your parents tell you, at least the ones that I know, is that you're going to get an education. Your education is your passport to a brighter future. And by education, it's not just what you learn in the classroom. It's up to you to challenge the things that you learn and move forward with it and teach others around you.
Your panelists made a lot of profound statements supporting the growth of the youth in spite of the negative overtones about the African identity. How are you going to use the information from the panel to help African youth, especially those in the diaspora, to move on?
Yes, one thing I took from my panelists is the importance of knowing yourself and knowing who you are. So I'm currently working with a nonprofit organization called U.S. Africa Synergy
Okay.
to start a mentorship program with high school students
Okay.
so that they will have a positive African role model in their life who can help them not only with their intellectual issues, but social problems that they face as immigrants in a different environment.
Right.
We are also working on having a weekly screening of historical African movies that students can watch and have discussions afterwards so that we will know about our past, be inspired by that, and incorporate that into the various academic journeys that we are taking.
Now, you were talking about high school students as well. Are the high school students just people of African ancestry, or is it just limited to Africans?
No, that was actually one of the things we were debating. And we've come to a conclusion that we need to incorporate any student who's interested
Okay.
in learning about Africa. Because when students come here, especially when I first came here, I was teased in school
Okay.
for being African because all my classmates knew about me was the $1 a day can save the child's life commercial they see and the constant negative depiction of the continent. So just educating Africans in high schools is not enough. We need to educate other students on the campus so that they will know that there's another image of Africa that isn't shown in the media. And when they see young African students, they should respect them and not make fun of them for being African. Because being an African is something that I hold dear.
Right.
Every African needs to walk with their head held up high and not feel embarrassed of who they are.
Should be proud of themselves. A student from Guinea who was in attendance asked a very poignant question regarding the identity, or his identity rather. He was not sure whether he is an African or an American. Why, according to his own narrative, whenever he returns to Africa, he was called an American. And when he's here, he's called an African. Ancestor Malcolm X called people in such conflicted conditions as Confucianists. What kind of help can be extended to this Guinean and students like him?
I think the first thing for students who are caught in between identifying with Africans or identifying with African Americans is to educate both people. So what we can do for students like that is to tell them about their history.
Okay.
So that when they face such challenges, they can tell the African American students, yes, I'm African, but I've been in this country with you and I've learned from you.
Right.
So you should learn my history and respect who I am as an African. And then when she goes back to Guinea, she has to let the Guineans understand that she's caught in between two walls.
Right.
But she's willing to learn from them and teach them what she knows. Life is a process, and everybody you see, you have to learn something from that person. They need to learn something from you. That's how we all grow. You can't take somebody out because they weren't with you from the beginning. Her being African, she may not know her language, but she can be taught her language. She may not know everything about her culture, but she's capable of learning it. So I believe both sectors need to be more open-minded to learning from people who are different and teaching others about their own culture.
I was not a member of the panel, and it's rather unfortunate that none of them actually addressed the plight of this young man. First of all, you talk about history. This young man is conflicted because he actually doesn't know his history. Guinea once was all Africa. The only water, you know, the Atlantic Ocean, they robbed that ocean from Africa. It was supposed to be an African ocean. India is a subcontinent. It has an ocean called the Indian Ocean.